Thanks. Hello, everyone. Good morning on this snowy Wednesday. We'll just wait a little bit longer to ensure everyone is admitted into the Zoom meeting, and then we'll get started. Okay. Got a good group of people in here today. Hello, everyone. So my name is Jill. I'm a Watershed Communication Manager with NSWA. And I would like to welcome you all to the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance's third webinar of this fall series. So today we have Kallum McDonald with the Alberta Invasive Species Council joining us today. Thanks so much for joining us. And he is with the Alberta Invasive Species Council Aquatic Invasive Division. And we will be discussing aquatic threats to the North Saskatchewan River watershed and beyond today. So we've been running these webinars once a month on Wednesdays throughout the fall and winter, and we've had a variety of great speakers discussing exciting local initiatives, research, and projects happening in our watershed and beyond for the past few years. These webinars do provide the opportunity for you to learn something new and ask questions over your lunch hour. So thanks for joining us and taking time out of your day. So before we begin, there's a few housekeeping items that we always like to cover. The webinar, as always, will be recorded on and later shared on our YouTube channel. You can also see our past Watershed Wednesday series videos there as well. And we would also appreciate that you please keep your microphone muted during the presentations, just to ensure there's no background noises. We will have a Q&A period during the last 10 minutes of the webinar. And so we ask that you add any questions you have for Kallum into the chat feature to post your questions there, and then I will be bridging them to Kallum after. So any question that you have, feel free to ask it. This wants to... Oh, perfect. No, as always, we'd like to start off in a good way. So in the spirit of respect and reciprocity, NSWA acknowledged that the lands within the watershed of the North Saskatchewan River are in Treaty 6, Treaty 8, and the Métis homeland. These lands are the traditional territories, traveling routes, and gathering places of the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, Stoney, and Nakota Sioux. We recognize and we thank the Indigenous peoples who have cared for this land since time immemorial, and whose rich histories, cultures, languages, and presence continue to enrich these sacred lands that we all steward as treaty people. We invite participants to learn about the Indigenous peoples whose lands you reside, and I also welcome you to reflect on your place within the watershed. So if you'd like, you can share in the chat where you're dialing in from today, which treaty area, which watersheds, province, city, or maybe even from an international location. I think it's interesting to see where everyone's joining from. So with that, I will, there we go. Just introduce Kallum. So Kallum is an advanced botanist with many years of experience with plant surveying and weed management. The recent work has focused on education, monitoring, and control of aquatic invasive species. Having received an MSc in plant biology from the University of Alberta in 2023, Kallum has worked in various capacities for Strathcona County, Corteva, Agriscience, Alberta Environment, and the Alberta Invasive Species Council. In their free time, you might find Kallum kayaking on Alberta's many Great Lakes and rivers, trudging through bogs and fens, or conducting weed pulls in local natural areas. So thanks so much for joining us, Kallum, and I will just stop sharing and let you take it away from here.
Terrific. Thank you for that, North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance. I'm very pleased to be with you folks today. Thank you for partnering on this webinar. I'm really excited to share. And thank you, everyone who cares about the water and is willing to sacrifice their lunch break to hear me talk. I think I see a lot of familiar names in the audience. And yeah, those of you who know me know that I'm a nerd and I love the topics I'm going to talk about today. I do have a couple new pieces of information for those who have seen my aquatic invasive species talks before. But yeah, thank you everyone for being here and for having me. So I'll dive in here. So I'll talk to you today about some of the aquatic invasive species threats lurking beneath the surface of lakes, rivers, irrigation, and ponds in Alberta, focusing on the North Saskatchewan, as well as some of the new detections and new threats in Alberta. And I'll start just by talking about this overview slide. So this bridge, for those who don't know, this is the new Amiskwaci-Asokan or Beaver Hills footbridge connecting Northeast Edmonton to Strathcona County. So this is part of the contiguous trail system that connects all the way from Fort Saskatchewan to Devon, I believe, which is really cool, a really a great trail system to connect people to nature and to the river. And so I had the pleasure of kayaking under this bridge in October because we had such a nice fall, so I could do that. And yeah, it's really exciting that the bridge is now open to the public. They're still cleaning up some of the construction stuff, so it's not the most accessible at this point. But yeah, that's the new bridge on the North Saskatchewan River. And I'll see if my buttons aren't working. Oh, here we go. All right. So, as Jillian already introduced, I'm a biologist. I have a Master of Science in Plant Biology from the U of A. I spent a year working for Alberta Environment in aquatic invasive species. I'm currently with the Alberta Invasive Species Council now. I've been here almost a year, but I do come from a farm, so I've been doing weeds my entire life, and that's a big part of my background. And yeah, in my free time, you'll find me looking for rare native plants. But I also have been putting a lot of effort secondarily into mussels and clams. We do have lots of native mussel and clam species in Alberta, and there is extremely little knowledge and expertise on what the species are, where they occur, their population health, things like that. So I've been trying to put more effort into that, especially with the threat of invasive zebra and quagga mussels, not yet in Alberta, but certainly creeping their way closer from Eastern Canada and the US. So yeah, that's kind of me. And let's dive into some invasive species. So I just wanted to give kind of an overview. There are lots of different forms invasive species can take, right? They can be beautiful flowered weeds, zebra and quagga mussels, feral pigs that have escaped from farms or been released. If anyone's familiar with Texas, Texas is a mess with feral pigs, and Alberta has a bit of the feral pig problem as well. With a picture of fish there, you can see the effects of whirling disease and salmonid fish. So Alberta,
I
of
made a
course, is
mistake, period. That was legit.
oh, sorry. So as you can see in that picture of the fish, that's whirling disease affecting salmonid fish. So the trout species, right? Alberta is trout country, and so that's very concerning. The effects of whirling disease causing that pinch in the tail, and it ultimately is fatal to the fish. And then rats, of course, Alberta's rat free, 75th anniversary this year, trying to keep it that way. And then we've got some goldfish happening all over the province. So invasive species can come in many forms. We're going to focus on aquatics today, but just want to remind folks that there's no shortage of diverse and interesting species with incredible biology and terrible ecology posing threats to Alberta. So our topic today, aquatic invasive species or AIS. These are invasive species that affect lakes, rivers, irrigation, wetlands, etc. And they are non-native species that did not evolve in a given area, in this case, Alberta, and they compete with our native aquatic species for resources and for habitat. They can also interfere with aquatic recreation. So certain aquatic plants, like Phragmites or Eurasian water milfoil, they can interfere with shoreline access, paddling, propellers on your watercraft, things like that. And they can also interfere with water-dependent infrastructure, which is particularly the concern for zebra and quagga mussels as they attach themselves to hard surfaces. Therefore, they clog pipes and water intakes, which could cost an extreme amount of money for our water, power, and irrigation infrastructure. And it costs many, many millions in Eastern Canada and the US. And we really don't want that to happen here. So that's briefly what aquatic invasive species are and why we should be concerned. This is probably my most boring slide, so I'll keep this one quick. But just to give folks some context, there are some laws in place that pertain to aquatic invasive species. So I'll point out the Fisheries Alberta Act. This is our provincial regulation. It has a list of prohibited aquatic invasive species. There's 52 currently listed species crossing many taxa. So there's plants, fish, crayfish, mussels, snails, fish diseases, and some aquatic invertebrates. So there are lots of species of concern. Not every species of concern is listed under there, but that's just the most recent list of prohibited aquatic invasive species that the provincial government prioritizes. And if they do arrive in Alberta, for some of them that already are in Alberta, province has some efforts in place to combat those species. This legislation is also associated with the watercraft inspection program. So if you have a boat and you've crossed the provincial borders, the southern and eastern borders especially, you may well have passed a watercraft inspection station. So think for folks, if you've been on your way to Jasper, between Jasper and Hinton, there's a watercraft inspection station. So the powers and the requirements of watercraft inspection are listed under that legislation. There's also the federal government's Fisheries Act. So, pardon me, there's the Fisheries Alberta Act and the Fisheries Act, two different pieces, two different governments. And the federal legislation prohibits a whole different suite of species. So, especially a lot of carp and other invasive fish species. And it also prohibits the release of non-native species into our lakes and rivers. So, in brief, that's the legislation. There are some rules in place to help protect our native ecosystems and our infrastructure from invasive species, and those are the laws that they stem from. So, dive into the species now. We'll start with Prussian carp. For those who are not familiar, Prussian carp is essentially a gray or silver version of a goldfish. They are very closely related, anatomically and genetically very similar, and they cause essentially all the same issues. So Prussian carp have amazing biology. They have this ability called autogynogenesis. Don't worry, there's no quiz at the end of this. You don't need to remember that term. But autogynogenesis refers to the ability of female Prussian carp to clone themselves. So you don't necessarily need to release a female and a male together into a water body. You could potentially just have one female released, and they would continue to clone themselves with sperm from other species being used to trigger their cloning process, which is really cool as a biological phenomenon, and is really horrifying as a ecological phenomenon because that allows them to reproduce quickly and to dominate water bodies, which is really unfortunate. So that bottom left picture, that's during a treatment of a stormwater pond, and ultimately that was 40,000 fish removed at 1.5 tons of biomass from an urban stormwater pond in summer of 2024. So really, really horrifying, but amazing biology again, but terrible ecology. They just can take over and they eat up all the food, stir up sediment. Water gets very cloudy, and that's often associated with the feeding habits of species in the carp family. In particular, relevant to the North Saskatchewan, you can see in the provincial government's map here, lots of south and south central Alberta are overrun with Prussian carp. They're in all the major rivers south of Red Deer. And unfortunately, you see a couple dots have shown up in the Edmonton area as of late. So Spring Lake and Cardiff Trout Pond, Telford Lake, those all have Prussian carp, unfortunately, within the past couple years. And I regret to inform folks that just as of, I want to say October, so just a month or two ago, there are reports of abundant and mature Prussian carp, so at least several-year-old individuals present in Black Mud Creek in Edmonton. So it's been kind of a gray zone as to whether Prussian carp are for sure in the North Saskatchewan River. There's lots of stormwater ponds that they've been introduced to in the area. Lots of those ponds have been treated. So Epcor and St. Albert have removed Prussian carp from stormwater ponds over the past years. But it's looking pretty likely now. As far as I know, there hasn't been specifically a Prussian carp pulled out of the North Saskatchewan River itself. But yeah, given the abundance of Prussian carp and individuals being multiple years old in Black Mud Creek, that's about, as far as I'm concerned, that's about as confirmed as it needs to be that they are present in the North Saskatchewan, which is really unfortunate. We'd held these off for quite some time. So that's really unfortunate to hear. And if folks are wondering how are these fish getting around, we'll talk about several other fish species, and it seems to be more or less the same case for all of them. And the suspected mode of introduction is illegal live transfer and release. In other words, people putting live fish in buckets driving them around and dumping them into new water bodies, which is extremely concerning behavior. You might ask, why on earth would someone do that? There are some cultural reasons for it, especially with goldfish. People also getting rid of pets. People, if they're sick of their pet goldfish, they might just release it into the nearby water body or stormwater pond, thinking that fishy will live out its life. And boy, does it do a lot more than that. And yeah, so it's really concerning with all these new fish popping up and new locations. Next up, goldfish. We can copy paste pretty much everything I just said about Prussian carp. Goldfish are very similar. They have incredible reproductive capacity, forming massive populations, particularly in our urban stormwater ponds. And so, yeah, goldfish, there's over 100 locations in Alberta. And just again, to read the context, there was that stormwater pond in Edmonton last year in Glastonbury where 40,000 fish were removed, 1.5 tons. And the town of McGrath, just this fall, September, October, they removed 65,000 goldfish from their fishing pond in their town, which is just a shocking amount of fish, a shocking amount of biomass, and just highlights their reproductive capacity. And just think of all that food they're eating and all the resources they're taking away. They're consuming, other fish eggs, they're consuming aquatic insects and invertebrates. And so they're taking all that food away from other fish and just consuming all the biodiversity into goldfish biomass, which is really horrifying and concerning. So again, goldfish mostly introduced from folks releasing their pets, though there are some cultural traditions where releasing captive organisms is a sign of good luck, and so unfortunately, folks are practicing that in our natural water bodies, which is very concerning. And again, release of live fish is illegal, so that's not ideal given the scale of the problem goldfish are becoming in Alberta. This is my old boss at Alberta Environment. This is Nicole Kimmel, the aquatic invasive species specialist with the province. This is a goldfish she helped pull out of a pond here in Alberta. So just to give folks context, these fish are multiple years old. They can be the size of a dinner plate, like the one in her hand. It's truly shocking how large they can become. People don't realize that when they have their little pet goldfish in the jar in their house. They don't necessarily think about how much it can reproduce and how big they can get. So it's pretty amazing. I love these striking photos to characterize their reproductive capacity. Next up, let's talk about some of the new-ish fish to Alberta. So unfortunately, in 2024, we had three new fish species detected in Alberta, three non-native fish species. The first being common carp up at the top there. So another member of the carp family, just like Prussian carp and goldfish, except this one grows much larger. If folks are familiar with Australia, essentially the eastern half of Australia is overrun with common carp, and estimates are roughly in the 80 to 90% range of biomass of the entire Murray-Darling River Basin is Prussian carp, or sorry, is common carp. So they have truly become the overwhelmingly dominant species there and have taken up so much food and resources in those river systems. And we've never had a common carp occur in Alberta. This occurrence was at East Pit Lake, just north of Wabamun town site. If folks aren't familiar, that's a coal mine reclamation site. And you actually have to hike in a couple minutes and up a hill. I've definitely lost my breath at the top of that hill many times as I've gone in there. And so for a common carp to arrive in that in East Pit Lake, how did it get there? Someone very deliberately had to know that location. You can't really see it from the road, and had to hike that in and release it, which is extremely concerning. These other two fish in the middle here, we've got a largemouth bass and a pumpkin seed. These are reports from Cardiff Trout Pond, just north of Edmonton. For those who are more into fishing than I am, you might recognize largemouth bass used to be stocked by the province. That practice ended quite some time ago. My understanding is that they weren't surviving the winter very well. I'm not sure if there was other reasons that drove that decision, but yeah, that was a largemouth bass pulled out of Cardiff. And so that's another example. Cardiff is also an artificial water body from a former mine or gravel pit, I forget. But how are these fish arriving there when there's no inflow, there's no outflow, and they are not established in Alberta otherwise. So same thing with the pumpkin seed. Pumpkin seeds are native to the east coast of North America, but they have been spread across much of the continent. They are present in British Columbia. and that's the first occurrence of those species here in Alberta. So very concerning. And then just this fall, we have this lovely bloke down at the bottom. This is a black crappie. No one seems to have any other pronunciation other than crappie. I'm not that deep in the fishing community, but that seems to be what they're called. So black crappies, again, are native to part of North America, but they've been spread across most of the U.S. states and several Canadian provinces. And there's now a very large population. I saw one fisher had taken out about 50 fish in one day out of Cardiff Trout Pond, just a black crappie. So another really concerning, illegal live transfer and release issue with Cardiff Trout Pond now harboring the those three species, the largemouth bass, the pumpkin seed, the black crappie, also Prussian carp, and also the northern crayfish, none of which were supposed to be in that pond. So some really concerning behaviors occurring in that area. So that's where efforts are going to focus in the coming years on the don't let it loose message to encourage folks in the area to be aware of the impacts of releasing non-native species, as well as the rules and regulations and direct folks to some better practices to protect our waters. And then I'll also point out these little minnows in the bottom right. So we've had a very interesting case raised to us by Dr. Matthew Morris. So Dr. Morris is a professor here in Alberta. He works with fish, and there is this interesting issue of rosy red minnows. So in Alberta, we have a native species called the fathead minnow. It's very abundant, it's widespread. You can find it in lots of places. Very common species. People don't particularly fish for it because it's very small, but it's a kind of a keystone species that offers, it feeds species larger than itself. So lots of other fish and birds will eat fathead minnows. So they're a very important food source for other species. And unfortunately, people seem to have, there's been an explosion of release of rosy red minnows, which is the same species as the fathead minnow. It's just this kind of orange to orange red variant. And unfortunately, people have been releasing it. And so there's a lot of questions about uh, impacts for interbreeding. So genetic impacts of the rosy red minnow, if their genetics might be different. Also, a lot of diseases associated with the rosy red minnows in captivity. So lots of pet stores have struggled with their rosy red minnow supplies being just plagued with many, many fish diseases. And so if people are releasing rosy red minnows into our waterways, what kind of fish diseases might they be releasing along with the rosy reds? Not necessarily new. This has been kind of on the radar for several years, but given how small they are, um, physically, right? They don't grow to a large size. They haven't been necessarily a priority, and they are not specifically regulated on legislation at this time. There's also kind of the weird issue of them technically being the same species as our native fathead minnows. So, yeah, experts aren't totally sure how to deal with that. But there are some grant applications in to do some basic research to answer some of those questions. And at minimum, if highly diseased fish are being released into our native water bodies, that's concerning, and that could lead to some major problems. Next up, whirling disease. I know I got to move a little quicker here, so I'll just keep this quick. But whirling disease was first detected in Alberta some years ago. The province has put out a lot of signage at the infected water bodies and some fishing spots and boat launches. Whirling disease is present in the upper reaches of the North Saskatchewan watershed. Just for context, though, this specifically affects salmonid fish. So if you are a big fan of our lake sturgeon in the Edmonton area in the North Saskatchewan, right, we've got our amazing lake sturgeon, one of our species at risk. They are not salmonids. So whirling disease isn't specifically a concern for lake sturgeon, but it is a concern for our threatened native trout species. So things like West Slope cutthroat trout, bull trout, Athabasca rainbow trout, things like that. Yeah, whirling disease seems to have a highly variable impact. And it's not totally clear if that's fish genetics or environmental conditions, but there are places where whirling disease has had almost no detectable impact on fish populations, and other places where it wipes out, close to 100% of a fish population. So it's kind of a roll of the dice as to how severe its impact will be. And there's lots of ongoing research on detecting and understanding the dynamics and genetic impacts of whirling disease. I'll turn to invasive mussels now. So zebra and quagga mussels, these are really the top threat of aquatic invasive species. Zebra and quagga mussels have overtaken essentially the eastern half of Canada and the United States, especially the Great Lakes are a major hotspot. Zebra and quagga mussels now covering hundreds of kilometers of lake bed and clogging water intakes and pipes, imposing massive infrastructure maintenance costs on infrastructure that depends on the Great Lakes for water. So zebra and quagga mussels, you can see they have that kind of letter D shape to them. It's a bit warped, but they don't have the same symmetry that our native mussels and clams do. And importantly, the invasive mussels, they attach themselves onto hard surfaces, again, like the pipes and water intakes, which is where the infrastructure issues come from. That also contributes to their ability to be spread around, right? So they can attach themselves onto a boat, onto a trailer, and they can hitchhike their way from water body to water body if someone's moving their watercraft around. But their larvae, conveniently for them, are microscopic. So their larvae can be floating around, not even visible in a drop of water in say your rubber boot or in a bucket or in the water at the back of your boat. And so that's another way they can spread as well, is they can just invisibly, silently stow away as invisible larvae in drops of water. So that's why it's really important to clean, drain, and dry all your watercrafting gear before moving between water bodies. And to clarify, there seems to be a bit of misinformation sometimes. We do not have invasive zebra or quagga mussels in Alberta at this time. They have never been confirmed here. But we do have a native mussel and clam species, and I have another slide where I'll go into that a little bit more to kind of give you a direction in how to tell if you're looking at a native or invasive mussel. Um, I think I covered most of this already, but the zebra and quagga mussels have just had a devastating impact, especially on the Great Lakes. So there they have completely upended the food web. So as filter feeders, mussels suck in particles and algae from the water, and that's how they eat. And so by kneecapping the photosynthetic level of the food web, that's the base of the food web, that causes some very negative cascades to higher species in the food chain, leading to a collapse of the fishery in the Great Lakes and the extinction of several fish species, including some dace species, for example, in the Great Lakes. So, just incredibly profound and devastating ecological and economic impacts by zebra and quagga mussels. They totally changed the nutrient dynamics of the water. Folks often say that the Great Lakes have never looked better, and that's because the water is very clear. These zebra and quagga mussels have proliferated to such an extent that they filter the entirety of the water volume of the Great Lakes within a matter of weeks, if I remember correctly. And so they've really changed the nutrient dynamics. A clear lake might also be a dead lake, is one way to interpret that. It's really decimated the typical nutrient and ecosystem dynamics that supported the fish life in the Great Lakes. So here's an example. I've got some pictures from Global News. I love this one on this boat propeller, just to give folks a sense of the attachment and the encrusting that invasive mussels do on hard surfaces. You can see just how easily it would be to transport these species on your watercraft, which is why, again, it's so important to clean, drain, and dry your watercraft, to stop at watercraft inspection stations. If the mussel sniffing dogs are around, there's the canine unit is trained to smell invasive mussels, and so that's why it's really important that we keep these out of Alberta, because our water intakes and our water pipes could look very similarly to this, and there would be just untold infrastructure maintenance and replacement costs associated. And then this photo here, this is from Lake Winnipeg. Regrettably, Lake Winnipeg fell to invasive mussels back, I want to say, in 2012 or 2013. So this is an example of what can happen when there's a die-off of the invasive mussels and their shells wash up onto the beach. And their shells are incredibly sharp. People cutting their feet is a serious issue with invasive mussel shells washing up, and obviously diminishes the recreational quality of our lakes and rivers, which is really horrifying. So I really, really don't want that to happen here in Alberta. So I stole this slide from my old boss at Alberta Environment, just to give folks some context of where invasive zebra and quagga mussels are at this time. So you can see, again, the eastern, roughly half of Canada and the US has a lot of invasive mussels, the southwestern US as well, and the Great Lakes obviously being a massive hotspot of zebra and quagga mussels. Manitoba is where the dominoes are kind of falling. So Manitoba has had, again, like Winnipeg, I think was back in 2011 or 12, 13, somewhere in there, and several additional lakes and reservoirs. So Clear Lake and St. Malo Reservoir in Manitoba, both having mussel detections last year. And that's getting pretty close to the Saskatchewan border. So Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, we're all getting pretty nervous watching these species crawl closer. And then south of Alberta, down in Idaho, there's the Snake River, where there's a massive multi-million dollar project going on in the Snake River to eradicate the detection of invasive mussels there. It seems to be a very challenging battle. They have not won yet. And I wish them the best of luck in their efforts because it's extremely expensive, extremely challenging. And yeah, it's really scary to see what's happening there and for them to not be winning so far in their efforts. So that's where invasive mussels are currently in North America. I'll just recap again. We do have those watercraft inspection stations. We currently have 11 permanent stations and one roving station. Alberta is back up to its full capacity of inspection stations. And these are emphasized at the southern and eastern borders where mussel-fouled watercraft are most likely to be entering the province. There's trained inspectors there to look for not just zebra and quagga mussels, but all sorts of aquatic invasive species. So aquatic plants as well that might be hitchhiking on trailers or on boats. They also have high pressure hot water to decontaminate and to kill off any mussels if they are detected. Just a reminder, there is a legal requirement for pulling your plug from your boat and for pulling over at watercraft inspection stations. And their hours and locations are now publicly available on the Government of Alberta websites. So you can find those there. The last number I heard was 13 mussel-fouled boats in 2025, but we haven't received the final numbers yet. I think we just sent them a follow-up yesterday. But once we receive those numbers, we'll put them up on social media, and the government, I assume, will put out a press release or put them up on their website. Continuing on the theme of cleaning watercraft, this is a major project that the Invasive Species Council took on this year. So these are our clean, drain, dry, and decontaminate units, or CD3 units. So these are free to use solar powered units. We've installed 4 of them in the North Saskatchewan Watershed. You can find these at Cardiff Trout Pond, north of Edmonton, Stoughton Lake and Elk Island National Park, the Laurier Boat Launch in the city of Edmonton, and at Riel Park on the Sturgeon River in St. Albert. So kind of a bit of a pilot project to test out these units and get aquatic recreation folks in the area familiar with cleaning, draining, and drying their watercraft appropriately so that they don't spread aquatic invasive species and fish diseases. Importantly for these big units, there's a shop back so you can suck up bits of water and mud. And there's an air hose as well to blow off water and debris and to dry your watercraft. And then tongs to grab weeds that might be caught on your trailer, your boat trailer, and then a scrub brush as well to help get off the debris. So those units have been deployed in the area. I also am pursuing one more unit, potentially a trailered unit. We are not finalized on where that unit might be yet to be deployed. Yeah, we're exploring partners and locations at this time. And then just one more note on invasive mussels, kind of a curious pathway of entry for them has been hidden inside an aquarium product called a Marimo moss ball. So these are not actually moss, they're algae. And these are a popular kind of aquarium aesthetic feature. People like to have them in aquaria. They're just these cute, fuzzy little green balls. And unfortunately, folks importing them into Alberta have actually brought in some zebra and quagga mussels. So again, not they haven't been detected in any lakes, rivers, or irrigation, but yeah, tests have detected them, and shells have been found in Marimo moss balls. So if people were to dump their aquarium contents, for example, say if you had a goldfish and a Marimo moss ball, and you released goldfish, you dumped your aquarium into a lake or river, you could unintentionally be releasing zebra and quagga mussels as well. So if you have a Marimo moss ball, please do check it for invasive mussels. If you notice mussels starting to pop up in your aquarium, that might be a red flag. So yeah, DFO has seized multiple shipments of marrow mothballs that have been contaminated. And yeah, please don't let it loose. Don't release your aquarium contents or your pets or anything into our waterways because it's A, illegal, and B, you could be releasing much more than just what you think you're releasing, which is really concerning. And then I'll mention here native mussels and clams. So this is where I've been putting a lot of my effort lately because folks seem very surprised in Alberta. As soon as they see a shell, they're like, "Oh my gosh, zebra and quagga mussels, they're here, we have them." And I just want a friendly reminder to everyone that we actually do have native mussel and clam species that evolved here. They live here and they've been here since time immemorial. So just some examples of some pictures of them there. Um, Zebra and quagga mussels, importantly, they attach themselves onto hard surfaces. So rocks, concrete, wood, metal, the invasive mussels of concern, they attach themselves. Whereas our native mussels and clams, they are mud sitters. They just sit in the mud, they sit in the sand, and they filter from there. They don't attach themselves onto hard surfaces. So that's the key distinction. An attached mussel is an invasive mussel. Please always take pictures, put them into EdMaps, iNaturalist, or send them to us or send them to Alberta Environment. And I'll dive into reporting more in a couple slides. I'm going to skip this one for time, and we'll turn to aquatic invasive plants, which is my strong suit, but I can also ramble too long, so I'll try to keep it quick. First, let's talk about invasive Phragmites. So this has been a bit of an explosion, particularly in central Alberta. So most concerning, of course, to the North Saskatchewan watershed. Invasive Phragmites shown in that upper left photo. That is a stormwater pond in Spruce Grove. Those Phragmites stems are about 10 feet tall. And note on the left side of the photo that there's 8 to 9 foot tall stems growing up through a spruce tree. So it's an incredibly vigorous plant. It can grow up that tall, even in very tough conditions. And you can see this path that's been cut through the middle was the poor irrigation man or the poor drainage manager trying to access his valve in his stormwater pond. And so he's done a really good job of combating that invasive Phragmites population. But just to give folks an idea of what Phragmites can do to our wetlands, to our drainage areas, and what it could hypothetically do to irrigation, which is really concerning. So a massive fire hazard, massive vegetation management issue, and Phragmites is an absolute bulldozer ecologically. Those stems are so tall, so dense, it just kills off everything in its path. And it is the only species I've seen that can directly outcompete and kill off cattails. Cattails, of course, are widespread and very common and important wetland and shoreline vegetation. It's a native species and it's very competitive. They're very vigorous and very abundant. And Phragmites is the only thing that I've seen that can actively bulldoze tails and kill them off, which is really horrifying. So here's the Phragmites map. You can see that concentration, especially in central Alberta. I don't know the exact number. I think the province was approaching 100 invasive Phragmites locations, but we've made good progress against them. So you can see the X's in black are areas that have been eradicated, and populations in blue have been treated at least once, whether by cutting or with herbicide or something else. So Alberta's actually doing pretty good at fending off Phragmites. But talk to folks in Ontario. If you have any friends or relatives in Ontario, say the word Phragmites, and they'll know what you're talking about because Southern Ontario is just wildly overrun with invasive Phragmites. It's amazing what it's done there. Friendly reminder for folks as well, sorry to complicate things, but we do have a native type of Phragmites that is different from the invasive one. So this is American reed or the Phragmites australis americanus. So this is a native type, and the key distinguishing feature here is it has these red-purple lower stems. So kind of a red wine color happening in the lower stems. That's the key way to tell them apart if you're not sure. They are present. The native Phragmites is present in a lot of our central and northern Alberta water bodies, but it tends to not form the same kind of large populations as invasive Phragmites. And excuse me, there are diseases and pests and insects that feed off and use our native Phragmites that don't seem to affect the invasive Phragmites. So there are some things to hold the native Phragmites in check, and that typically don't come with invasive species, which is why they can proliferate so well. Next up, flowering rush. So flowering rush, the largest infestation in Alberta and possibly Canada, is none other than our precious Lake Isle. Sorry, Lake Isle. So the flowering rush at one point occupied somewhere between 25 and 30 kilometers of shoreline, particularly like the west southwest lobe of the lake. There's been ongoing aquatic herbicide control through a contract with Alberta Environment and applied by fan boat. I got to ride the fan boat last year. It was really fun. And so the flowering rush had a very substantial population there. There are still pretty significant areas of it left, though lots of the smaller bits that were spreading towards the north and east of the lake have been reined in, but there's still quite a bit of flowering rush in the west lobe of the lake. Yeah, a bit of a very challenging situation there, and it's just unreal how it takes over. Um, did I? Yeah, there's my Lake Isle picture from the fan boat in fall 2024. So that's all flowering rush, and it forms these giant mats of mud and roots that then lift off the bottom of the lake, and they float away and sprout new colonies. So there's just these giant invasive species rafts floating around, which is really horrifying. And biodiversity wise, it just decimates. So there's not a lot for other aquatic native aquatic plants in this kind of area in Lake Isle, which is really concerning. Okay, I've got to keep this moving because I'm sure folks are probably wrapping up chewing and have jobs to get back to. But next up is yellow iris. This is one where we're actually kind of winning, at least against our native water bodies infested with yellow iris. So just like garden variety irises, this is an aquatic one, though. It can kind of grow into a foot or two of water, also just in mud. Lake Isle has a little bit, but I believe the Lake Isle Lac Saint Anne stewardship group had deployed their control crew that was working on some flowering rush to combat the yellow iris, and it's on their radar. Really grateful for the attentive and proactive Lake Isle folks. Good for you guys. And Lacombe Lake, that's the fen at the edge of Lacombe Lake on the right. That's where I've been helping Alberta Environment and Lacombe County dig out the yellow iris, and we are winning against it there, which is really exciting. So as far as I know, those are the only two natural water bodies that have yellow iris. Otherwise, it's all on private property or in wet ditches and things like that. So, yeah, that's really exciting that we're winning at least against those cases. And yeah, particularly a central Alberta problem there too. Suspected, it's a horticultural species that's escaped or seeds have washed away again into ditches or ponds, and that seems to how it's getting around. And again, it's unfortunate that new bit of population was found in Lake Isle this year. But again, kudos to Lake Isle and Lac Saint Anne folks for getting on their radar really quick, and I'm sure there'll be a game plan in place for 2026. Next up, Himalayan balsam. Gosh, this is a beautiful plant, but boy, does it explode. Literally, Himalayan balsam seed pods explode and release their seeds over several meters. They form these beautiful pink flowers. One of the names I've heard for it is poor man's orchid, and you can see why. It's a vigorous garden plant, but it does really well in moist soil and just forms massive monocultures that take over and push out wetland and riparian species. And in the photo on the right there, you can see the 9 foot tall plant they pulled out in a wetland by Wabamun Lake last year. So it's pretty shocking how tall it can get, even just as an annual plant. So it has to grow from seed every year, and that's how tall it can get late in the season. So it's an abundant and amazing plant. Bit of a hotspot in central Alberta. That's really where most of the problems are. But we are making good progress against the population at Antler Lake with support from TC Energy and a grant we received from them, as well as support from Alberta Environment with some hand pulling. So good progress against that population. In general, it's a pretty tough situation with Himalayan balsam. It's really abundant in a lot of wetlands and drainage areas around Edmonton. Next up, purple loosestrife. Unfortunately, in the North Saskatchewan watershed, we have purple loosestrife at Telford Lake, doing really well within and behind the cattails for nearly a kilometer-long stretch. And then there is a good population of purple loosestrife and Himalayan balsam along the shore of Wabamun Lake as well. Thank you to the Wabamun folks who helped pull Himalayan balsam by South Seba Beach. That was great. And unfortunately, I think some maybe Point Allison folks did some cutting of seed stalks for purple loosestrife. So some efforts are underway to control both those species at Wabamun Lake. And Alberta Environment is aware and hopefully developing a response plan for those. And then I included here probably the most unflattering photo that's ever been taken of me. It's really embarrassing, but I thought it was a great photo to show the height of purple loosestrife at its peak. So again, please ignore how ridiculous I look, but this is about an 8 foot tall stalk of purple loosestrife grown right here in central Alberta. So it's a very vigorous plant, can grow incredibly tall and really kind of take over our wetlands and choke out biodiversity. And again, as with lots of our invasive species problem, it's particularly a central Alberta, Edmonton area kind of problem. So no shortage of issues in and around the precious North Saskatchewan River. I'll just go quick here. North Saskatchewan folks, we don't have to worry about curly leaf pondweed at this point. We don't have it here yet. But that was it's probably been here for an incredibly long time, but it was only really reckoned with last year in fall 2024, present in the Bow and South Saskatchewan rivers. And unfortunately, while on a road trip this summer, I found it in Lethbridge in the Old Man River. So a whole new river, a couple hundred kilometers, may well have curly leaf pondweed, which is again concerning. And this is kind of a backwater beside a boat launch in the Bow River on the left. You can see that incredibly dense mat of vegetation that can be really problematic for biodiversity, for clogging water intakes, for paddling, fishing, swimming, and for launching your boat. And so I don't want that to happen to our other lakes and rivers. So that's the potential impact of curly leaf pondweed in Alberta. So that's the map for it currently, mostly in the south. And again, the government has yet to add my new dot to Lethbridge, but I did notify them. So the next time they make their maps, they'll add that in to the Old Man River. I'm going to skip this for time. Sorry, folks. I just want to leave enough room for questions. But I'll just talk quick about our Protect Our Waters campaign. So this is a new kind of marketing and graphic design campaign we've launched with lots of stickers and hats and t-shirts and stuff. It's been really fun. We had a lot of fun designing these with a graphic designer. So if you would like some of this merch to give out at your own events or to your own organization in the North Saskatchewan, let us know. And we will do our best to arrange a little package of merch to go out to you so you can give out these fun materials. And then I'll just touch on reporting quick. So I think folks often they don't know what to do if they found a species that they know is invasive or that they suspect might be invasive. Organism identification typically takes a lot of expertise. And so there are some ways where you can funnel reports of species to experts to get them identified and determine whether they're invasive. So EdMaps is an app and a website that you can use to report invasive species. EdMaps reports go straight to assigned experts. So if you suspect an invasive zebra quagga mussel and submit a report through it, that will go directly to our provincial aquatic invasive species specialist, as well as some other taxonomists who know their species really well and can identify. So this app directly connects your reports to an invasive species expert on that group of organisms to get it identified and to notify the respective authorities. One limitation, though, of EdMaps, it does not help you identify the organism. So this is only for if you know a species is invasive or if you suspect it's invasive. That's a way you can report it is through EdMaps, but the app itself doesn't help you identify the species. On that note, though, there is another tool for that, which is iNaturalist. So I've been relying a lot on iNaturalist. It's a very fun tool, and you can use this for anything, native or invasive species. So this is a great way to, download this app on your phone. You can take pictures, and it will give you a suggestion of what that species is. It's better for some types of organisms than others, but in general, for large plants, I find it's actually quite good, especially flowering plants. And so this is a great way where you can post things to iNaturalist, whether or not you know what it is, it'll give you a suggestion, and then other experts can come along and verify whether that's correct and can explain their identification. And so this is really useful because folks don't have to know what they're looking at, right? You can just say, oh, that's a pretty plant or a cool looking shell. And you can take a picture of it, put it on iNaturalist, and then experts will come along and provide the identification. And if it is a concerning species like Phragmites or zebra quagga mussels, that can be directed then to the appropriate authorities. And the Invasive Species Council is working on importing iNaturalist invasive species data into EDMAPs automatically so that our assigned invasive species experts can review them and get them to the required authorities. So again, EDMAPs and iNaturalist, those are kind of the two key apps and websites that you can use to report invasive species. For aquatic invasives, you can also call the Aquatic Invasive Species Hotline at Alberta Environment or directly report to their Aquatic Invasive Species Program email address. So you can send them a location and photos if you're concerned about a potential invasive species. Lots of municipalities, for example, Edmonton has 311. You can report invasive species through those channels. Excuse me, and folks are always welcome to text me, and I genuinely mean this as an open invitation. That is my personal phone number. Please text me pictures of shells, of mussels and clams and snails. Text me pictures of plants, and I will do my best to identify them, or at least assure you whether or not it's invasive or not. So yeah, open invitation to everyone. Please feel free to do so. I always put out that invitation, and not enough people take me up on it. So yeah, I welcome that. And yeah, thank you everyone for your time. I really appreciate everyone being involved in this. So yeah, when you're out loving our lakes and rivers, if you're out on a nature walk and you think you see a weed or an aquatic invasive species, please report it through EDMAPS or iNaturalist. And yeah, I'm really happy for everyone taking the time for this talk. So thank you all, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Kallum. That was really great. It's crazy how this is such a, yeah, very difficult to manage invasive species one. It's always an ever-changing threats coming up. But there's tons of questions in the chat. So yeah, take a sip of water and then we'll get to the next round of questions here. So first of all, Amy's wondering if you can expand on crayfish in northern Alberta. So she says we have them here in Grand Prairie and Bear River. Do you want us to notify EDMAPs every time we come across them, or is there another process?
Yeah, great question. So I cut crayfish from this presentation just for time. But yeah, so northern crayfish, Faxonius virilis, viral crayfish is another name. They're a bit of an odd case. So they are arguably native to the Beaver River watershed, which encompasses a small area of Alberta, more or less the Cold Lake area. But they are not known to be native to the rest of the province. And so if you are finding them in Grand Prairie, coincidentally, Bear River happens to go through the backside of my family's farm outside of Grand Prairie. So I'm all too familiar with crayfish in that water body. So as far as reporting them, um, you are legally required to report aquatic invasive species to Alberta Environment, but you're not required to report them if they've already been detected in that location. And they have already been detected and reported multiple times in Bear River. You're always welcome to submit it anyways if you're not sure. I would never discourage that. But I am aware that the province is very aware of the crayfish issue. Almost all of our major rivers in Alberta, the Athabasca, the Smoky up by Grand Prairie, and the Bear River, North Saskatchewan, Red Deer, South Saskatchewan, Bow, they all have crayfish. So they're kind of everywhere, at least in our major rivers and in a lot of our fishing ponds as well, likely being moved by the angling community. So yeah, I would be happy to take more questions if you have more questions on reporting crayfish or need more context on them. Sorry to cut them out of this presentation. I just wanted to save the time for the other species.
Okay, great. Yeah, no problem. They're pretty rampant throughout Alberta. And there's another question from Scott about blocking the reproductive abilities of Prussian carp. Is there a way to do this or any work to investigate that? From what I know, they can
Interesting.
reproduce asexually, so
Yeah, blocking their reproductive ability. That's an interesting thought. I'm not totally, I'm not sure about that specifically. I don't know. If there is a way to do that, I would love to hear it. As far as combating Prussian carp, it's our current state is pretty hopeless as for pushing them back or controlling them where they've already established. So I wish we had something like that. There are carp herpes viruses present in Europe and Asia, and potentially, after many years of research and approval, those herpes viruses could potentially be deployed as biocontrol agents. Australia has put a lot of research into that for their common carp. and there is carp herpes virus 2 that would affect Prussian carp. So hypothetically, potentially, maybe one day with lots of research and approval, that might be an option. But as far as yeah, blocking reproduction, I'm not certain.
Mhm. Well, that's interesting. Wouldn't that be nice if we could just have a quick fix like that?
At least something to hold them back, right?
Mhm. There's also a
Yeah.
couple questions about whether or not we've done anything or explored the option of offering alternative release locations for these species that fulfill the cultural needs, but also protects the aquatic ecosystem.
Sure. Yeah. So as far as like alternative locations, I'm not exactly sure what that would look like. Just because there is the Federal Fisheries Act prohibition, so it's illegal to release a non-native aquatic organism into a lake or river with fish in it. So, yeah, so there's no way that that's compatible with our natural water bodies, at least by the law. There is a retailer, aquarium retailer network. We have it on our website where you can return pets if you're done with them. But yeah, as far as like alternative release location, yeah, I don't know if anything like that exists. And yeah, that certainly wouldn't be compatible with the law, at least as far as our natural water bodies are concerned.
Yeah, would have to be some sort of indoor pond space, I
Yeah, yeah,
suppose.
or isolated artificial pond on private property, potentially. Yeah, pretty
Mm-hmm.
speculative at this point. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. That's difficult. Another question about the possibility of species being introduced by birds or other migratory animals. Shell's saying that she knows snails hitchhike on birds, but don't know about the possibility of fish or eggs doing the same. Um,
Great question. So it would be, yeah, it's incredibly hard to try to pinpoint if birds are associated with the spread of, say, Prussian carp, for example. However, there is one study I've seen that evaluated the survival of Prussian carp eggs through waterfowl digestive tracts. And it was very low, but not zero. So there is a possibility, a very low possibility, but a possibility of Prussian carp eggs surviving waterfowl digestive tracts. Again, actually like directly measuring the contribution of waterfowl moving something like Prussian carp, incredibly hard to actually pin that down and attribute it to birds. But that does seem to be a possibility there, though by far it's the illegal live transfer and release by folks not thinking critically or folks who just want to fish for those kinds of fish and moving them around in buckets alive. That's definitely the main way that those species are moving around at this time.
mhm. Okay. There's another question. Is our pet stores um, doing this at all? Is there any of those types of Prussian carp coming from pet stores being released into the environment
Good
somehow?
question. I don't know if I've quite heard that case for Prussian carp. Obviously, for goldfish and rosy red minnows, that tends to originate from the pet stores. There is a wonderful network of pet stores who are very educated and certified on aquatic invasive species. You can find that on our Invasive Species Council website. And so lots of those pet stores, yeah, are well educated. They hand out resources to their customers to educate them on not releasing pets and aquarium species. And there are some pet stores that will take back, say, goldfish or something, so that people don't release them. Though I do know anecdotally, some of those pet stores are maybe a bit overwhelmed by how many returns of goldfish and things like that people do submit to them. But there are some pet stores that will take species back.
Hmm. And along that vein, is there are plant stores doing anything to kind of more promote native plant species or reduce the amount of ornamental plants that they are selling, specifically if they are known to be invasive species? Just kind of a question about that.
Sure, great question. So the Alberta Native Plant Council has put together a fantastic map of Alberta showing retailers that do sell native plant species to grow in your garden. So I direct you to that. I think they just put that out a few months ago, but they've made a map of all the greenhouse kind of retailers that do provide native species. And then I do know, for example, in the city of Edmonton, my colleague does actively engage with greenhouse retailers with these called Grow Me Instead resources, which are specifically garden plant directed invasive species resources that show this is an invasive species that people like as a garden plant. Here's some less problematic alternatives to it. So you can find those on our website. And again, I know my City of Edmonton colleague specifically does that kind of outreach in the Edmonton area where a lot of the purple loosestrife and Himalayan balsam challenges are. So yeah, there is active ongoing work there.
Okay, great. I think we'll just do one more quick question. The rest I
Sure.
think there's only a couple more we might have missed. So the rest I can send to you via email, Callum, and then get back to whoever was curious. They can also email me.
Sounds good.
So we found tubifex worms in Bragg Creek, says Flora, a native trout habitat. How likely is there to be whirling disease in the creek? And should we submit the tubifex worm location to EdMaps?
Good
And they said Bragg
question.
Creek in the
Yeah,
Bow
so
watershed.
in the Bow watershed. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So I believe there is already, I'm forgetting who it might be, Dr. Patrick Hannington. So there's a researcher somewhere that has a map of where tubifex worms are known to occur in Alberta. So that might be already known on their map. I'm not sure. I can't picture it right now. I have to dig to see where that resource is. That's great that you've identified tubifex worms. So tubifex worms are known to be established in Alberta. As far as we know, I think they're native to Alberta. It's the disease specifically that transfers between the tubifex worms and the trout. That's the problem, not the worms themselves. Um, yeah, and so yeah, you're not required to report that necessarily. Feel free to send that to me, Bragg Creek folks, and I will try to find where that map was to see if that's a known location for the tubifex worms or not. But I know research has gone into figuring out where whirling disease could occur at all, and a part of that was identifying where the tubifex worms are present.
Hmm. Okay, great. So yeah, Laura, you can email um, water@nswa.ab.ca and I can forward it over to Callum or whatever email you guys have on your website. I think that should work. But perfect.
Absolutely,
I
and
think
I'm
that'll
AB
be,
Invasives, or sorry, AIS at AB Invasives, CA,
perfect.
or text me.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect. So thank you so much. This was a really great presentation. Clearly tons of interest and questions about this topic. And so, yeah, with that, I will just mention that we have our next series of webinars coming up February 4th, March 4th, and April 1st. Topics to be announced. As always, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. So we encourage you to check it out later there. Or if you missed it, you can share it with whoever you know might have wanted to check it out. And follow us on social media to be in the loop and our newsletter as well. So thanks, Callum, and everyone have a great rest of your day and stay warm out there.
Thank you, NSWA, for partnering on this. I greatly appreciate it.